Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escoffier Online, and this morning we're going to be exploring one of the breakfast favorites, the coffee cake. The coffee cake got its name from being served with the drink of coffee, of course, and it's typically served at breakfast time with coffee or for coffee breaks or really any time of day, whenever you want to eat it at lunchtime or in the afternoon or in the evenings before bed. That's just fine. So enjoy your coffee cakes and let's get started. We're going to be exploring two different kinds of coffee cakes today. So the two kinds of coffee cakes that we're going to be exploring are the coffee cakes that have crumbly tops and then the coffee cakes that are made with the laminated dough, the Danish dough that we used last week. For the Danishes, we're going to use the same exact dough, which is in the recipe database. If you have any questions, if you need any help with it, just let me know. It's pretty straightforward. There's a recipe video with it at all as well. And we're going to be showing some techniques how to make some of those long coffee cakes with that dough as well. But first, let's talk a little bit about the crumbly top coffee cake. This is a softer coffee cake. Sometimes you'll see it in ring molds or in round mold like the one that I made here today. It's really almost like a cake type of a muffin mix, and typically with a streusel topping on top with some white icing or even some powdered sugar. And these, like the long coffee cakes that we're going to be making, you can make these in a variety of flavors. You can flavor them with many spices, fruits, nuts, even dried fruits. The one that I made here today, I just used some blueberries in here, some fresh blueberries because I had some nice blueberries. And I put some streusel topping on the top, and I also put some slivered almonds as well. So if you're a nut eater, this is nice for some crunchiness to your cake. You can also take a small amount of the batter and put some cinnamon in it and make a cinnamon flavored batter and then swirl that in the cake the same way that you would do like maybe chocolate marble pound cake. So definitely explore the lighter side of the coffee cake with these crumbly coffee cakes, and both are nice to be served for breakfast any time of day, especially for brunch if you're having brunch at home or if you're working in a restaurant or a hotel. This is a nice little thing that you can put on your buffet, and you can display it nicely as well. The two different kinds, you can do different flavors with different textures and different colors with your fruit. So keep that in mind. Next, we're going to be making the long coffee cakes using the laminated dough that the same dough that we used last week for our Danish dough. So let's get started on that. Okay, so I've got my laminated dough. It's nice and cool. Be careful with these. They have a tendency to heat up quickly in a hot kitchen. So try, if your kitchen is really hot, maybe just work with one small piece at a time so it doesn't get away from you and get really sticky and start sticking to the table. It's going to start actually proofing, which is not good either. So I've got my surface floured. And we're just going to be rolling this out to 1/8 of an inch thick, the same thickness that we rolled the Danishes to. This is just a little different shape and form. What's nice is you can make one big batch of dough, and then you can make so many things with the dough for home or even for work or for a restaurant or hotel that you're working in, or even your own bakery. So the dough is versatile. So if you don't like the dough in the recipe database, then you can make your own and do your own unique flavors to it. Cardamom is something nice to add to the Danish dough, just a little bit. It gives it a very unique flavor, and I think you'll like it. So try it. You can also add some orange zest or lemon zest to make it your own. So you'll be making batches of these doughs if you're in your own bakery or if you're working in a hotel or a restaurant, and you'll be able to make so many things. You can store them in the freezer. We talked about that last week. Freeze really well. Can section them off into pieces, and then you can just pull those pieces out the night before you're ready to roll. Okay, so what we're doing is we're rolling this to 1/8 of an inch thick, and I'm rolling it in the rectangle shape because we're going to be making a long coffee cake. So we want to do this in the rectangle shape. It's a little warm in here, so I'm using a little bit extra flour just in case my dough gets a little bit sticky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be brushing some of this dough off. It's nice to have one of these dry pastry brushes handy for doing this. Try to keep a couple of pastry brushes in your kitchen if you can, especially for projects like this, because you're going to be using egg wash and apricot glaze, and you're going to be rolling your dough, and you're going to want to have a nice dry brush to brush off that excess flour if you need. And do we have any questions? We haven't been hearing anything yet. I hope everyone's having a good morning with their coffee cake. We have a question.
What was the recipe for the first dough?
The recipe for the Danish dough is in the recipe database, and it's under Danish dough. If you need any help, if you can't find it, just let me know. I'll send it to you. And like I said, the instructions are very clear. It's a simple laminated dough, and there's a recipe video with it as well that you can follow along. But please let me know if I can help in any way. Okay, so back to our coffee cake. This coffee cake, we're going to be braiding it with alternating strips. So we're going to want to cut the strips. I'm just cutting the side. It's best to use a wheel cutter for this, but if you don't have one, you can just use one of your knives. I'm cutting this about 1 inch wide. And if you notice, this is the center. I'm leaving the center uncut because we're going to be filling this with some jam. And once we start braiding it up, it needs something to hold it together. So don't cut all the way to the center. So next I'm going to be cutting the other side. And don't worry if you don't get these strips that you're cutting perfect, because it's just going to be braided up. Won't be noticed if they're not perfect. I mean, you don't want a real thin one and then a real thick one, but you don't have to fuss over that too much. Okay, so I've got my handy pack, which is just some raspberry jam. You can use any jam or filling that you like. Last week we posted the cheese filling, which is super nice. You can also use dried fruits, nuts, chocolate chips, cinnamon sugar. You can brush this with egg wash, cinnamon sugar it, then put maybe some raisins or some dried apricots and some pecans. Super nice filling as well. So let's go ahead and start braiding this up. What we're going to do is we're just going to alternate the strips into the center and cover the jam. And you might have to pull them just a little bit to make sure that they're covering. And the jam is going to help this all stick together, so it's not necessary to egg wash the strips, but you can if you want. We're just folding them over. Kind of be sure that you're pulling the end down a little bit so the next piece can fold over. And do we have any questions on this technique? Okay, so I'm just pinching the end, tucking it in a little bit, and then I'm just going to be putting it on a parchment lined pan, or even a pan lined with Silpat like the one I have here. So do we have any questions on this technique? Okay, so you can even do the folding or the braiding on your tray if you want, or you can braid it and then pick it up. I always braid mine on the table, and then I just carefully pick them up. And this half sheet pan is perfect for 2 coffee cakes. Okay, so we'll set this aside, and then we're going to start on our next one. The next one we're going to be doing is a cinnamon, and we're going to be braiding it using a different technique. What we're going to do first is we're going to make a roll, and then we're going to cut the roll and braid it. And it kind of, you can see kind of like the striping in the cinnamon by doing this. So let's get started. And do we have any questions on anything so far? Okay, so same thing. We're going to be rolling the dough into a rectangle shape about 1/8 of an inch thick. And like I said, I'm using some extra flour because it's warm in here and I can feel the dough starting to get a little bit sticky. This is why if you're in a warm kitchen and you have maybe a sheet pan with like maybe 6 pieces the size on it, keep it in the refrigerator until you need them. I wouldn't leave it sit on the counter because it's just going to start warming up. It's actually going to start proofing on you too, which you could lose some of your yeast activity. Okay, so we're going to roll this and then we're going to egg wash it and we're going to dust it with some cinnamon sugar and then we'll be rolling it up and we'll be doing the cutting. So it's kind of a cute thing. Like I said, you can do these with pretty much any flavors that you like. Have fun with your coffee cakes. Enjoy them in the morning with coffee or for brunch or in the afternoon or evening. Okay. All right, next I'm going to get some of this flour off of here. Kind of have a lot going on. Like I said, it's hot in here today. Okay, next I've got my egg wash that I made earlier. This is just a few eggs with a little bit of water. And I'm just going to be brushing this on my dough. Be careful not to put too much on here. You just want to get the dough tacky. You don't want to have any pools or puddles because once we put our cinnamon sugar, it's just going to ooze out. So I'm just kind of putting a little bit on and making it tacky. The little extra flour that I have on here still is making it a little tacky as well, almost pasty. Okay. All right, now that this is covered, I'm just going to be putting a little bit of cinnamon sugar. And then we're going to be just rolling this up like a roulade. I like to cover these pretty well and get some nice striping. This effect also looks super nice if you put a little bit of chopped up chocolate as well. You can do a thin layer of cinnamon and some finely chopped chocolate, or even just a finely chopped chocolate. But be sure that you're egg washing this first because you need these things to stick to something. Okay, so next we're just going to be rolling this up like a roulade. And do we have any questions? Okay, so we have a roulade here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to be flattening this out a little bit. And we're going to cut this and we're going to braid it. And my ends are not perfectly even, which is fine. We're going to be tucking them under once we do the cutting. So you want to flatten this out because we need to get 3 strips for the braid out of this. And you can make these larger or smaller, whichever you like. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut 3 strips. And I'm only cutting one side because then we're going to turn it around and cut the other side. So we're just going to braid this by taking the outside, and if you twist it a little bit, you can kind of show the work on the inside, the striping of the cinnamon. So every braid that's on the outside goes to the middle. I'm taking the outside to the middle, the outside to the middle, the outside to the middle, and the outside to the middle. And that's how you do your braiding. For those of you that have never braided hair, you can start braiding coffee cakes. Okay, so we're going to turn this around. And then we're going to do the other side. So I do half at a time so the ends are smaller that I'm pulling in, and so they don't stick together. But I'm sure that you could, if you wanted to cut all of the strips at once and then do your braid like that, that's just fine. Okay, so our first side we went over, and since we've turned this around, this next side we're going to be braiding under. So we're going to, instead of taking the outside over and in, we're going to take the outside under and in. So we've got our outside, we're taking it under and in, 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 and we're just going to follow it to the end, and then we're just going to kind of squeeze it and tuck these pieces under. So here we have a nice braid, and it's very unique looking. It's going to have some super nice striping once it starts to proof and open up a little bit and bake. And like I said, it looks really nice with chocolate as well. Okay, so we're just going to pick this up and we're going to put this on our tray. And do we have any questions? We have a question.
What temperature do you bake it at? And is egg wash like egg mix?
Okay, we have two questions. Is the egg wash made with egg whites? The egg wash is made, the one that I made here today is made with the whole egg. So I just took about 3 eggs and I put them in a bowl, and then I put about a 1/4 cup of water in there. And then I just whisked it together. The real simple egg wash. And if you're going to be working on a big project, you can make a little bit more egg wash, and then it'll last you all day. You don't have to stop and make your egg wash. And you're going to bake these at 375 for about 30 minutes or until they turn golden brown and they appear to be nice and done. Okay, so now that we've got our coffee cakes made, we've got them shaped in our different forms, we're going to egg wash these and we're going to set these aside to proof. And remember, your proof is always double in size. General rule of thumb, just watch your baked goods, and as soon as they appear to be doubled in size, then they're ready to go in the oven. The proof is super important, otherwise you're going to be ending up with some really dense and heavy baked goods that are just not going to rise on you. So make sure you're proofing. If you don't have a proofer, you can just proof these at room temperature. Just put them in a warmer place in your kitchen, not a hot place. I don't recommend putting them on top of the stove top when the oven is on. If it's really warm, feel it with your hand first. If it's just kind of lukewarm, it's okay, but if it's hot, it's going to start actually killing the yeast before it's actually risen. Okay, so we're egg washing these. You can top these with streusels or toppings or whatever you like. We're going to leave these proof until they double in size. They're kind of bigger. They're a little bit bigger than the danishes, so they're going to take a little longer. They're probably going to take at least like maybe 30, 40 minutes to proof, depending on how warm your kitchen is. Okay, so we're going to set these aside, and I made some earlier, and we're going to go ahead and finish them. Okay, so I've got some coffee cakes that I made earlier. What I did is I prepared these last night. I went ahead and I braided them and twisted them up. I put them in the refrigerator on the pan just like this, and I covered them. I pulled them out this morning and let them come up to room temperature. I proofed them and I baked them, and that's a really good step that you can use if you're going to be producing things for an early morning bakery. So keep that in mind. If you don't have time to come in and start rolling things out, you can get them all ready the night before, put them on a cart like a speed rack in the refrigerator, or even at home if you're just doing one or two, you can do them the night before. They'll be perfectly fine in the fridge overnight. So let's go ahead and finish these. We're going to be finishing these in the same way that we finished our danishes. We're going to be brushing these with a little bit of apricot glaze. It adds some flavor. As you can see, it kind of just brings them to life, and it adds some nice shine, and it also helps too to keep the outside soft, especially if you're making these ahead of time. If you're having company over, it's going to help keep it soft if you have it sitting on the counter, or even if you have a bakery and you're keeping it in a bakery case. This is really going to help if it's sitting in there. Like maybe you'll sell a lot in the morning and not so many in the afternoon. So this is going to help keep it soft. And also if you're working in a restaurant or if you have it on a buffet, it's going to be sitting out there maybe uncovered for a little while. So definitely does a lot of things. I recommend always using the apricot glaze on your danishes and your laminated coffee cakes. So as you can see, the cinnamon braided coffee cake, it kind of is a little bit rustic looking, but it's got some really nice striping to it. Okay, now that we've got these apricot glaze, we're going to go ahead and just put a simple icing on them. You can leave them plain like this if you like, or you can put a little bit of icing on them. I've got some icing that I made earlier with just some powdered sugar and water, and I'm just going to be drizzling this over the top with a spoon, or you can even use a fork, or if you're doing a lot of this, you might want to use like a slotted spoon, and that'll kind of go a little bit faster. Then I'm just drizzling some icing, giving this a nice finished look. And do we have any questions on the coffee cake? So please try the coffee cake, and I'll be posting a recipe for the crumble top coffee cake as well. So try those. It's going to be like a sour cream crunch coffee cake. Those are really popular. It's got some sour cream in the batter, gives it a nice rich flavor. So try your coffee cakes with a cup of coffee. If you're not a coffee drinker, then have a little tea. And let me know how you do on your coffee cakes. And then next week, we're going to be continuing with our breakfast series, and we're going to be doing breakfast bread. So I hope you guys can tune in next week. Okay, now that we've got these finished, let's go ahead and present a few. Maybe we'll put them on plate. We'll cut them up nicely for a nice little display. And do we have any questions? Because we're going to be wrapping up soon. And I hope everyone had a nice day making coffee cakes here at Escoffier Online. Okay, so we're just going to be picking this coffee cake up. We're going to put it on our cutting board, and we're just going to carefully slice it. I'm going to cut off the end. We'll have some nice slices of raspberry coffee cake. Maybe we'll put these on a plate with some of our crunch coffee cake. And you'll be sure to dazzle your friends and family if you make them a few coffee cakes for breakfast or brunch. We'll put some oranges on our plate. We've got a few mint leaves from the garden. So try the coffee cake. Let me know how you do. Let me know how you like making coffee cakes, especially if it's your first time. And we have another question.
Two questions. What is in the apricot glaze, and can you put nuts in it before you bake it?
Okay, we have a few questions, but first we're going to check out the inside of our coffee cake. It's got a nice raspberry filling. Looks super pretty. It's nice and colorful. And the question is can you add nuts to this before you bake the coffee cake? You can. Nuts are a super nice filling to use for coffee cakes. They add a lot of flavor and texture. And the apricot glaze, it's just apricots and water and sugar, and you're going to boil them, and you can puree them. And you can also take a little bit of apricot preserve and thin it down with a little bit of water and use that as well. But I definitely recommend using the apricot glaze. Okay, do we have any other questions? Okay, so we're going to be putting a few pieces of our blueberry coffee cake on our little breakfast plate up as well. It'll be ready to be enjoyed with a nice cup of coffee, or like I said, even tea if you're not a coffee drinker. So enjoy your breakfast pastries. Let me know how you're doing, and if you need any help with any of your assignments or your studies as well. So as you can see, this is kind of a cake-like. It's nice and light. It almost kind of has like a muffin consistency to it. So you have two really nice textures. So enjoy your coffee cakes, and we'll see you next week for some quick breads. Have a great weekend.